upsets in the A-League. We've got big scores in the WSL, and our Tillies are at home this week, gearing up for the Olympic qualifiers. I've got Cody back with me. We've got a guest appearance from Kieran. Hey, guys. How are we?
Always
Welcome
a pleasure,
back.
Josh. Always happy to be here on our Mondays. I know it obviously gets uploaded later in the week, but what else would you rather do on a Monday night?
I know, right? Kieran, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. It's always good to talk Tillies.
Exactly, right? Look at that. He's already on brand, guys. We've got the right guy. Just for anyone that doesn't know who you are, Kieran, like myself, do you want to introduce us, where you're from, where you draw your knowledge from, and what you do in the world of football?
I write on women's football exclusively for Impetus Football. We cover everything, every major league from the ground. So we have people at the stadiums, at the training sessions, grassroots and up in England, France, America, starting to get into Mexico a bit, just everywhere, A-League especially. A-League's our main focus, but yeah, the Impetus Football covers women's football all over the world. So I'm an editor and a contributor there, where I use for my hot takes and breakdowns of why my team is struggling or doing well in the dub.
Let's go. That's what we love to see. Let's jump to some of these games this weekend. I think one of my favourite results is Wellington getting up 3-0 over Western Sydney. Cody and I had a chat about this off air. Kieran, what was your reaction to this result?
Yeah, who does it say more about? I don't know. Like, I don't want to. I mean, it's sort of the national sport in Australian women's football now to kick Western Sydney Wanderers, but I mean, like, Wellington should probably beat them, but they shouldn't be beating them 3-0. They should be doing a bit better than that, because they did better than that against Sydney FC the week before. So, I mean, it probably says more about Western Sydney than Wellington, but Wellington did deserve their win.
Yeah,
I was actually at that game. Honestly, watching that game, I thought Wanderers, if you told me the result was going to be 3-0, the way the game played out, I thought it'd be the Wanderers actually getting that result. They were, for a certain extent, they were fantastic. But then Wellington get one goal, the game becomes a bit even. Wellington get their second, and suddenly it was just one-way traffic after that. I said it to you off air. I'm going to say it on record as well, because, you know what, screw it. The problem with Wellington winning is you come here and it's like, well, what Tillies is there to talk about? They've got no Australian players. So from that aspect, it's a little bit sad. But no, it's massive for Wellington. And we've been crying out for a Wellington side that really can be competitive. And another thing I said to you just before we started as well, that result either last season before, Wellington get smacked themselves. They don't dominate the game in any way, really. They're kind of playing off the counter. One thing they've been missing in the last few seasons is a player that, even when Wellington are under the pump a little bit and don't look like the better side, one player that can kind of step up individually and actually create something for them. And now they've got two or three between Speckmeyer, Macy Fraser, who especially for me was fantastic. Now suddenly they've got these X-Factor players that can produce a result out of nothing for them almost. So I know it sounds harsh on Wellington. I'm kind of digging into them a little bit, but I was actually quite impressed with how they were able to manage that game where, you know, they didn't look like the better side, but they still managed to come out just looking so dominant in a way.
It's a maturity to them that wasn't there the last 2 years, isn't it?
100%.
Like
You look at...
They're not there for the experience now. They're there to actually try and get results, whether that's playing well or not. They're there to actually get
Well, you look at players
now.
like Kate Taylor, Mackenzie Barry, who have kind of gone through those hard yards, being stuck in a wooden spoon side, and now they look like players that are genuinely not just at an A-League level, but even maybe at the upper echelon of it as well.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think the good thing is that you could have seen Wellington kind of try and hit another reset after a couple of bad seasons and try and start all over again from the top, but they stuck with it, and now they're going to see the fruition of those players that are coming out after having a couple of those hard seasons and hitting the ground running, which is fantastic to see. Let's head across to the absolute opposite side of the country. Newcastle losing 1-0 to Perth. Pretty even first half, but Newcastle's defense is starting to scare me as a Jets supporter. I'm not loving what I'm seeing there, but we'll figure that out. There's a couple of errant passes, too much playing out from the back for me, but Perth capitalised on an error and took it away.
I think if there's one thing that you want to talk about Newcastle's defence, Izzy Nino coming in looks like a very shrewd piece of business. One thing I said on the radio actually on Sunday, one thing that Newcastle have really been missing the last couple of years. Their keepers have generally been of a smaller stature, especially last season between Quello and Georgia Worth. A little bit on the shorter end of the stick. But because having someone like Nina Winch, she brings that physical presence that I think they've been missing in the box. It's a very shrewd thing to say, and obviously a keeper's ability isn't determined by their height. But when you're going from a keeper that's maybe 5'7", 5'8" to now probably closer to 5'11", 6 foot, it does make a difference in a way. So I think that for them in the long term will be decent at least, and it was massive at least in their first round victory over the Mariners. But you want to talk about Perth.
Yeah.
And Susan Fonstone-Camp, Kieran, I know you're over her. I think she might have played in NPL Victoria at one stage. I know we had her up here in New South Wales this off-season, but fantastic player, and I am so glad I put her in my fantasy team this week, because this could really be a season where I know we've seen glimpses of her ability, but now we could see her be a real focal point for Perth now, really.
Yeah, it all comes down to if she can stay fit. If she's had always been really talented. She was like a star for the Young Matildas a couple of years back. She's got a couple of belters for Wanderers when she was there, but she sort of gets going and then gets injured. And it looks like she's had a full preseason. She looks like she's played most of her NPL games. I didn't follow much of her in New South Wales, but from what I hear, she's fit. She's fully fit. So if she can stay that way, she's a sort of X factor player that Perth have kind of needed. She can dribble, she can shoot, she can create. She's got kind of that preferred angle that she likes to shoot from, but her and Sakalis can create havoc just off loose ball, or they can get the ball. There's players in front of them, they can take them on and create something, and that's something that you can't really plan to defend against forever. It's going to break down at some point with players like that. So yeah, if Susan's playing well,
it's a shame Janshevsky isn't there still, because imagine a front line with the two you mentioned, then you add her into it and you get a bit of extra flair and charisma as well.
Yeah, she's one of my favourites, but Perth didn't use her either for the first hour or the last 10 minutes. They didn't tend to give her the full 90, and she's a player that you need to give the full game to, because she can sort of wander around looking like she's doing nothing for about 10, 15 minutes of a game, and you can get a bit frustrated, but then she'll just get the ball and have a shot from halfway or something like that. So you kind of got to have her on the pitch at all times. Adelaide have been doing that. Hasn't helped them this game, but it did.
Are you allowed to compare it to Messi then? In terms of being able to escape from a game and then just come into it.
I did that with a video for the NPL. She scored this goal for Bulleen where she took on about 3 or 4 players, slalom in between them, and then side footed past the keeper. And because there was no commentators on, I dubbed over that Ankara Messi commentary over the top and sent it to her. So yeah, you can compare it to Messi. I do it all the time.
Let's go to Western United getting up at 2-1, last minute kind of dive for them to get up after a brilliant header from Emily Checker sent victory up early on. Biggest bit of news out of this, minus Western United winning, is an injury for Lydia Williams, which doesn't look too good. Watching the replays, it's not good. Reports are that she went to the hospital after. So hopefully she can bounce back pretty quick. Probably puts a question mark around whether she joins the squad in Perth, which, Cody, I know as much as you're not excited about it, you're also excited about the potential call-up for someone else to take that slot. But Western United getting up, Taranto sisters combining for a goal, and then last-minute winner.
Yeah, no, look, you mentioned the Taranto sisters, and they're probably 2 players that go a little bit under the radar. They're not your kind of flashy superstars or anything like that. When you've got Legazo alongside you in the midfield, obviously someone's there to take the headlines a little bit, but they're industrious. They do the job. Even last season, I thought they were fantastic, and they were in a side that went far in the league. I know, Kieran, you'll probably have a bit more inside information on them, being able to watch them a little bit more closely, but no, I seeing them at their best is always a pleasure, really, and you want to talk about Western altogether as well. I know we started the Toronto Twins, but I think Western in general, it was a question of their mentality as well. You have such a good season last year. You go into the opening game away to Perth. Obviously, it's a tough trip, but not coming out with a favourable result. And then suddenly your next game, as much as it's at home, is against a juggernaut sort of side in Melbourne Victory. It could be daunting. And 2 losses from 2 games wouldn't have been great for them. So for them to really step up in that match and make sure they got something out of it, and for it to be the Toronto sisters, I don't know if they're twins. They're twins?
Twins. Yeah.
Perfect. I was about to say Toronto Twins. I didn't want to sound stupid, so at least I know I wouldn't have. But having 2 players in that ilk step up when they're not the traditional big names in the side, it shows that there's multiple players across this Western side still that can have an impact on a match. And, obviously, like I said, Lagaze's one of the players that's going to get the attention. Hannakene's another one that's going to get the attention. So to see it diverted to two young players who generally are great footballers, that's also fantastic in itself.
Yeah, this game was frustrating one as a Victory supporter, but what Western United do really well is they coach the opposition, or they play to the opposition. So if they're playing, say, last season they were playing Wellington Phoenix time, they play possession game because they should be able to beat Wellington Phoenix at home. So they had the ball, they knocked it around, they created chances at will. But when they're playing a team like, say, Sydney FC in the semi-final last year or Melbourne Victory on the weekend, they set up to nullify the opposition's strengths and then hit back. So they had Hannah Keane and Carly Johnson, who were their two strikers, essentially. They had them playing wider because Victory like to attack through Jess Nash and Jamila Rankin, ideally. So they kept them pinned back. So really, Morrison and Checker were essentially spectators in the middle of the ground while all the attacks were coming down the flanks, and these two players that Victory used to attack couldn't get forward. It really helped Victory struggle to get their game plan going. And the goals didn't come through that, but it stopped Victory getting anything on the scoreboard really, except for that one goal. All the goals sort of were wind assisted in a way, but if you stop your opposition from playing their game, then it eventually becomes on your terms. And that's something that West United do very well.
Yeah, 100%. So we'll keep an eye on Lydia Williams and how she pulls up. Hopefully we'll get more news in the next couple of days about how that's going to turn up. Let's come back across to the East Coast, head up to Brisbane for a team I told you guys. Told you at the start they'd be in the top 6, and I'm holding you to it because they've just downed Sydney 1-0, and I'm absolutely here for it. Brisbane taking the cake at home. Look, I'm not going to say I'm right, Cody.
Hey, I had no arguments about Brisbane being in the top 6. I think that was Michelle that was saying. I'm not too sure about it, but no, I said it would probably be between them and Perth, and Brisbane would probably edge it. But it wouldn't have been. It's not the players that I thought would lead this side forward that are at the moment. You talk in the first game, Kui Lama already spoke about her. Now Chelsea Blissett's stepping up for a winner of all people. But no, it's fantastic, and this is a side. It seems like a well-oiled machine, and it took a fair bit of a defensive effort against Sydney FC, as you'd expect. You don't go and dominate a side like Sydney FC, unfortunately. Kieran, you said it before, Western United realised that, and they were able to switch their game around for it. But even the way they were able to play, the way they were able to set up, especially in the last 10 minutes, where Sydney are throwing just about everything. Plus, you've got the added fact that they have Courtney Vine in their side, who is, with no disrespect to everyone else in the competition, by far and away the best player in the league. You're talking about a situation that a lot of other teams would crumble in. So for them to really hold their own, Silkowitz, massive performance from her individually, but for Brisbane to be able to see that game out and actually come away with a win, it's not just a thing of that's a great result for them in the context of their season, but that's a record crowd for them that had a great day out and will most likely coming back. So even the context just off the field, it's fantastic. It's brilliant.
Yeah, everything's going right up at Brisbane, but I think they've found a way to stop Sydney. Like Sydney FC's attack is basically Courtney Vine, Shay Connors, Fiona Words, or Princess Zabini. Like that's their 4 options. All lightning quick players, all really good one-on-one, all really good at getting behind the defence. And Brisbane just sat right back. So if they're sitting, they didn't really park the bus. They played maybe 6 players behind the ball, but they sat so deep that you can't get behind them. And Vine, great in 10 yards of space, but if you don't give her that 10 yards behind you, then she has to change her game up a bit, and she doesn't have the fine ball control that like a Beanie does have, or say Remy Simpson had as well. She can sort of operate in tight spaces. Vine doesn't quite have that ability. So Brisbane, like I was saying with West, they really nullified Sydney's attack pretty well. They did hammer the shots on goal, but they didn't get the kind of opportunities they want to be creating, the ones over the top like Wirtz got in the first round.
It's interesting actually, because you're talking about Brisbane sitting deep. You'd need someone there that can really unlock a defence or even be a threat from distance. Last season you had Mackenzie Hawkesby to do that. Now I can't think off the top of my head of, maybe not a creative 10 in general, but like a mature creative 10 that can really, spearhead a side when they're on the back foot. You got someone like Sienna Silvesca or Indiana Dos Santos that probably could do that role, but then again, they're in their 16, 17 age bracket. I think Indiana could still be 15.
Yeah, both 16.
Both 16.
Yeah.
You can't expect that of them in a game like that as well. So suddenly it's like, okay, who do you have that can play that role, that can take that pressure on? I guess you can argue maybe they haven't replaced Mackenzie Hawkesby well, but in general, they probably should have the quality to win a game like this as well, even without someone like that.
Yeah, no Hawkesby, no Sarah Hunter. I thought they were going to use a Beanie as a playmaker more this season, but it doesn't look like they've had the opportunity to yet because Shay Connor's player registration wasn't completed by the club in round one, and Fiona Wirtz, I'm not sure why she was out this game, but they haven't had their full attack yet. I wonder if they are going to use the Beanie as more of a playmaker or Silvesca, but Gianna Dos Santos is the other one. I think she can come in and do it. She's a little bit older than Indy. She's been in the Young Matildas a little bit longer. She's a little bit taller, I think.
She natural winger, but?
No, she's more of a 10,
okay.
but she can play on the wings. I sort of judge it based on whether they've been playing on the youth team, which isn't always where they play on their club side, but she can do it, and she's a bit older, and yeah, she's one that's had some injury troubles, but if she's fully fit, she's an option too. But they don't have a playmaker at the moment.
Yeah. All right, let's head on down to Melbourne. City down in Canberra 2-1 in an interesting game of the week, kind of like the next one that we're going to talk about as well. But all in all, City kind of finding their feet, 2 from 2. Canberra stumbling at the start of the season. Very interesting here. Cody.
Yeah, no, I think we were probably a little bit critical of City after the Wellington Phoenix game, and I brought up the fact that an away trip overseas isn't always going to be the easiest thing. They definitely looked a lot better this week, whether it was because they didn't have to travel or not, I don't know. I'm not a sports science expert, unfortunately, but no, it's the sort of performance we expect from them. Maybe it could have been a bit more fruitful. Maybe they could have exploited the dominance a little bit more, but that's me being picky as well. Round 2, you're coming off maybe not a win that, how would you say it, alleviates a lot of pressure off you. It still probably raised more questions than answers for them last week, but you come to a game, you're at home, you get the job done, and you get a job done quite well. I was very, very high on Canberra leading into this season. I thought they'd be one of the top teams of the competition. I actually argued they'd finish above City this season. But for them to really go in, see that game out, and see it out in dominant fashion as well, you can only credit them. I don't think there was a stage where Canberra was overly dominant, not overly dominant in general, but overly dominant for a long period of time. And when you're shutting down the likes of Michelle Heyman, Vesna Milivojevic, I say Michelle Heyman for parts of the match. I know she did get a goal in the end eventually, but there's still a number of threats that they have in their side. Maria Rojas as well just came to mind as well. It takes a decent effort to make sure those sorts of players aren't continually providing a threat. So for them to do that, it's only a credit to them and their defensive stability.
This game's a funny one for me because I can see exactly what Melbourne City are trying to do and what their game plan is and what their players are supposed to do. I just don't really enjoy watching it. I don't like passing. I don't like circle work football. They've got players that can just go, like Brianna Paulson. If she gets it, she can just go and take players on and score a goal. I don't like seeing players pass around in circles. So when they get going and they get their forward passing going quickly, they look really dangerously entertaining, but sometimes they move a little bit too slow for my liking and a little bit too cautiously. Canberra's the flip side where they're fun to watch, but I have no idea what anyone's job in that team is just from watching them. So they had Sasha Grove starting at left back. She was at midfield last week. She was at right back this week. She can do all these things, but what do you really want to do to win the game? And Vesna Milivojevic was moving from striker to midfield this game. Michelle Heyman, she was switching with Nikki Flannery to being the striker and the playmaker. Like, if it's all on purpose, pretty good. I don't know if it is. I think they're still trying to find solutions on the fly a little bit. So, yeah, I'd like to see City play a bit more directly and maybe move Briley Henry into the striker position because I think she's probably a sharper finisher than what they've got. And let players like McNamara and Policina and Galich sort of get the ball to her. Because she's a pretty ruthless striker. They just
it's interesting you talk about the fact that City aren't as direct. Under Rado, I felt like they were. They were a little bit more fluid. And one comment that I think stood out to a lot of people when Rado went to the A-League men's side was that he's like, I want my players to play with a lot of freedom. I want them to be able to go out and express themselves. And it was something we did always see with the women's side, that the kind of inherent nature, like you said, someone like Rana Policina was able to pick up the ball and just really drive at people. And now suddenly Daria's come in. You'd think, considering they're related, they might have the same kind of train of thought when it comes to setting up a team. Maybe it isn't so much. It may not be the seamless transition that we thought, but it's interesting that since they've made that change, the men's side has struggled under Rado. The women's side probably don't look as fluid as they used to under Dario. It's a shame.
Yeah.
Rado was probably a match made in heaven for that side, but I don't know if it was his doing that he wanted to move on to, I guess you can say a bit more of a professional contract, I guess, in a way. But he was cooking with the women's side. It doesn't seem like he's doing it for the men's. It just seems like what he wants to do in a team is more suited to what Melbourne City have in their women's program.
Yeah, they've got a specific set of players that, like, a lot of these players were signed by Rado to work with Rado as well. So, I'm not going to say Dario's methods don't work, because they finished, third last season? So they do work. And there's a couple of times last season I was sitting there going, here they go again, watching them play with their short passes, and they short pass their way all the way to a goal from the goalkeeper. So, it does work.
I say Dario's not working. They're actually equal first at the moment. So I don't know where I'm going with that.
Yeah. But I will say they didn't beat any of the top 4 teams last season. They didn't beat Sydney, Western United, or Melbourne Victory when it came down to it, or in the league throughout the year. So I don't think you can play that style of game and beat the top teams. I think you can bully the weaker teams than you, or the teams around you, with possession game, but sometimes you just got to go for it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting when they go to a Sydney or a Victory or someone like that. That'll be probably the bigger test for them.
Yeah, Western's the test for me. If they can beat Western and turn the tables on last season, then I'll be sold on them. But I would like to see them switch the strike force up a little bit, play Briley Henry as the 9, and just try and really put some teams to the sword, because they got the players
generally
to
be
do
a bit more fun as well, I guess.
Yeah, or just the way I would do it if they were on FIFA. That's
Yeah, right. FIFA tactics, right? Always work. Let's head down south to another team that has also conceded 6 goals this season. Adelaide, going down 2-1 to Central Coast. Now, I'm vibing the Central Coast team. It's kind of sitting real good. They're looking good. They had a tough loss last week against Newcastle, bounce back, go away to Adelaide, who looked defensively pretty weak against Canberra, but going forward pretty strong and nullified the attack there. So how are we feeling about Central Coast, Cody?
It's an interesting style of play they got. It wasn't one that, and look, it probably can't. I wasn't expecting him to be as confident, I guess, this early in the season, but then again, you've got to take into account a lot of these players were, 1, playing together, and 2, playing also under Emily Husband in the NPL. It's obviously not the exact side that they had throughout the season, but it's still the bare bones of a side that was together for a full year already this season. Adding in Rolla Badawia, who played under Emily Husband the season before. There's people there that are familiar with what Emily Husband wants to do, and it's lucky that's the case, because it is a very intricate system that she does play. But you can see when things are clicking, when things are doing well, even against Newcastle. I said it last week, they dominated the game. They arguably deserved to win. Newcastle were just very good defensively and had an outlet in Melina Ayres that you can exploit, whereas now, it took a set piece for them to actually get their goal and get ahead. But it's an advantage they have, I guess, that you take advantage of when you've got 3 players with King, Wardlow. I believe there's someone else at the back that's quite tall. I just can't think of the name off the top of my head. But if you've got that threat, obviously you're going to take it. But just in general, they went to Adelaide, who Coopers is traditionally, not an easy place to go to. Obviously, it wasn't the full 9,500 crowd that they got for the men's a couple hours later, but it's still not an easy trip to always make. For Mariners to go there, dominate the game, and genuinely look like the better side of the deserved win this early into their A-League Women's return, it's massive for them. And it's not like, it's kind of that in-between phase of Wellington Phoenix, where, they were basically built from scratch and there was a lot of inexperience in it. And then you look at Western United, where they had a side basically built for 3 or 4 years prior. They're somewhere in the middle, but they still look good for it. So it's a credit to them and what they've done with the women's program over there.
100%. And we said with the Central Coast team too at the start of the season that, will they have that kind of surprise factor that Western had last year? And it looks like potentially they've got.
It's hard to say if they'll be at that kind of level, and you're talking knocking on the door for the premiership. That's a tough ask, but I don't think top 6 is out of the question for them.
No, definitely not. I think they'll definitely sit around that mid-table and have that. Kieran, do you have anything to add on Adelaide Central Coast?
Adelaide. I'm always bullish about Adelaide because their teams always look really good on paper, and then the season starts and doesn't quite click. I think they're just missing too many players still to really judge them. Last season, a lot of people spent the whole year going, "What's missing from Adelaide?" And it was Emily Condon just the whole year. You don't have her. You don't have their playmaker, their best attacking midfielder really. Dylan Holmes does all the hard work. She can get forward and score goals. We need someone who can put the polish on the midfield as well, and that's Emily Condon. So she can get fit. It changes the whole outlook of the team. No Izzy Hodgson really hurts them. They look like they're trying to get the ball wide and move it quickly, but the wingers get isolated, then the defenders get back, and the chance peters out. So you're left really with Ilana Chesky trying to create something out of nothing. She put a couple of good balls through, but yeah, they're unlucky not to such a draw though. Like if Hannah Blake hits that one or just really laces it, that's 2-2. So it's a whole different discussion we're having. So they're not completely out of it, but they're just missing a few too many pieces to really know what they're made of so far.
Yeah, 100%. Let's pack our bags. We're going to head overseas. Welcome to your first international trip on the show, Kieran. Let's start with the big one. Caitlin Ford hitting 100 appearances for Arsenal as Arsenal get up 2-1 over Bristol. Not sure how I feel about this scoreline. I didn't watch the game, but after all the recent scorelines of any team against Bristol, 2-1 for a team like Arsenal is kind of scary for me. But
look, a win is a win.
Game? I know.
Look,
I think Michelle was there.
WSL games are tough to watch live, unfortunately. They are at very, very bad times. But
yeah.
No, even just looking at it in the context of what happened, it's a 2-1 win away from home. You're considering the start they had where they weren't picking up points at all, you'd rather be in this situation than not picking them up at all. I think they're still trying to build into this season a little bit, and obviously this isn't an Arsenal team that looks as strong as what they have in seasons prior, unfortunately, but as long as they're getting results and as long as our Aussies have been a part of it, I'm not going to complain too much. Ford hitting 100 games as well, that's a massive testament to her, considering it probably says a lot about how the women's game is starting to professionalise as well. I can't think of many Aussie players that have hit 100 games for an overseas club, and even if there is, how many have hit it at a club like Arsenal, who just in general in terms of world football is massive. Yeah. So for her to be doing that, you're talking about a competition as well. It's not like the men's where you're playing almost 40 games a year and then cup competitions. The Champions League's obviously a lot bigger on top of that. You're playing basically 66% of it. The cups, I know they do. I think they have the Kieran, you'll probably be able to help me out on this. They have the group stage for the Conti Cup, don't they?
Oh, it's stuffed. It's a joke. It's a joke of a cup. Basically, the top teams don't come into it until the semi-final. So it's kind of like an FA Cup that the best teams don't have to play until the very end. It's a little bit, yeah. I don't even know how to explain it. You kind of have to just Wikipedia it. It's a mess of a tournament. And it's cool. I think it's cool that Chelsea just win it every year, and the final is always good to watch. But it's essentially a charity shield sort of thing. Like by the end of it, and like the FA Cup's still the big one over there. But Fort's great because like since she signed there under Joe Montemurro, and there were a lot of big names ahead of her in the pecking order, and Arsenal kept signing big names ahead of her, like Nikita Paris and Mana Iwabuchi, and it kept looking like Ford was going to get pushed out, but eventually, after a couple of weeks, they just put Ford back in, and she stays in. So no matter what happens at Arsenal, and he's not a big rotator, Jonas, the coach, so he doesn't like to switch players around too much. But Ford, if she goes out, she always comes back in, and she always delivers. So she's been a huge hit over there.
Yeah, we've already seen that this season as well. They benched her for week 2 and then instantly back.
I don't know why they even you would have thought they would have learned by now. Don't sign any new players. Like Caitlin's as good as it's going to get. She delivered at the World Cup. She delivers for Arsenal. She's a gun.
You talk about him not rotating players. We're kind of getting the brunt of that with Cooney Cross as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think she's just got to wait her turn. I think Kim Little can't go on forever, and she's a fairly similar player to what Kim Little is, and she's 32, 33 now. So, I mean, they didn't spend basically £500,000 on her Australian dollars to put her on the bench, but
succession planning, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's one to make sure no one else gets her because they know that they're going to need her, and she seems happy enough over there. Like she's in all the socials and she's like looking thrilled on game day. So, it's
I mean, I would be too even if I was sitting on.
It's a good atmosphere. It's a good atmosphere for her to be in. Like she's learning with some of the best midfielders in the world. I think Kim Little's the best individual player I've ever seen in person. So I mean, you couldn't have a better mentor than Kim Little.
Yeah, and what should be taken away from those training sessions and everything as well, with the international talent around her pushing her, is just going to see that kind of growth spurt in her, which is going to be
she's only 21. So I mean, there's no rush. Like
100%. No Tegan Micah still, Cody. Unfortunately, it's coming. She's playing cups and things
I
like
mean,
that.
look, at least she's playing something.
Yet.
Like, it was probably just a misjudgment from me. I thought she would go there to be the number one. I got that wrong. That's probably it's my own failing. It's my own mistake, and I am sad because of a preconceived idea I made in my head. It's like when you sit up at night and you create scenarios in your head, and it changes your whole mood. That's basically what I've done to myself in terms of how Tegan Micah's season is going to go. Stupid decision by me, unfortunately. But no, look, it's probably the same situation. Laws, I believe the keeper's name is at Liverpool. It's a similar situation. She probably won't be able to go on forever. I believe she's only 29 though. But Micah will get a chance. I'm sure Micah will get in there eventually. She's still there fighting for the number one. Unfortunately, Laws has just had a great start to the season as well. So something like that's going to play its part as well. But there will come a time where she'll slip up. Micah will get a chance. Micah's got to make sure she capitalizes on it. But it's at the end of the day, it's up to her, really.
100%. It's hard with those goalkeeping spots because, like, if someone's performing in front of you, there's no real.
It's not like you get subbed on for 10 minutes at the end of the game to see a game out.
You can't go to another position to be like, hey, I can play. Like,
Yeah.
And on the other side of the ball, Mackenzie Arnold, 1-1. Looks like the West Ham defense actually did something this week. Go team. So good for Macca not to be peppered. Let's head to Chelsea, 4-2 over Brighton. Now, I believe Michelle was actually at this game. For anyone missing Michelle's voice, we miss it too. Or as Dubzone used her, the Sydney FC superfan, as she caught up with Charlie and Mackenzie Hawkesby after the game. Sam Kerr gets an assist. Chelsea look like they've hit their stride.
Yeah, look, I can't remember what their record is. I believe it's 2 wins, 2 draws, is it?
Yeah, something like that.
They haven't lost a game. I know they're still undefeated, but I think the biggest thing that you can say on Chelsea is at least Sam Kerr's back playing. You had myriad of problems going into this season. 3 wins, 1 draw. Sorry, I knew they were around there somewhere. I just couldn't think. I know they weren't top of the table. That's why I got confused. That's goal difference doing its thing. But no, look, you're talking about, like I said, Sam Kerr's coming back into the fold as well, which is good for us in the sense of we're about to see the Matildas play 3 games. You need her as fit as possible. I think considering she's had those injury problems and now there's 3 games in a short space of time, I'd be surprised if she's playing. I won't say not playing the majority of minutes, but I'd be surprised if she's playing 90 minutes for all 3 games. I don't think, 1, we need her to, and 2, we should be pushing her for it. We're talking about 3 sides that realistically we probably should be beating, but we'll get into that a bit later. But no, like, that's probably the biggest thing I'm taking away from it. Sam Kerr's back playing, so I'm happy.
Yeah, 100%. It's good to see back on the pitch, like, considering there was that cloud at the start of the season where it was almost nobody kind of really saw her not being in the team for that first game, and everyone was like, ooh. But yeah, good to see. I think Charlie got some minutes again. I don't think Macca got on the pitch for Brighton on the other side. How are you feeling about those 3 Aussies there, Kieran?
Yeah, I'm really psyched to see Hawkesby over there. I know they were into it for a while, and it took a lot to pry her away from Sydney. So it's good to see her taking the chance. I think that she's one of those places kind of on the fringes. Midfield's hard to break into for the Matildas, but there's going to be some retirements the next few years. There's going to be some injuries eventually, and she's on the fringes. She can play well for the under-23s and crack that Matilda squad eventually. So it's a good step for her. I was happy to see Sam Kerr rested for the first few games because I knew, like, we'd seen the Matildas were all on holidays for as long as possible after that World Cup. So, like, she didn't do a proper pre-season. So I was glad that Chelsea have now signed the players where she doesn't have to play 90 minutes of every game in every tournament like she did last year and most of the year before. Even with Pernilla Harder, they were just absolutely, like, they were just flogging Kerr. Like, she had to play every game.
It's probably why she ended up with the problem
now
she
they've
did.
got. Yeah, just pushed it way too far. But, like, she didn't get injured. She was sort of carrying a calf injury throughout the season, but it wasn't major. But she was kind of adjusting her play a little bit. And I think she must have just guessed she could just keep doing it in the World Cup. And then when it came to it, then who knows? Like, but I'm just glad that they've signed players that can fill in for her now. So, yeah. From a Chelsea point of view, I like Emma Hayes. I like the way she coaches, I like the way she plays. But I'm really glad that she signed understudies and replacements for Sam Kerr because she's pushing 30. Calves go. You can't keep doing that every week. You got to stay sharp.
100%. We'll skip through these next two because there wasn't much for them to do. Courtney Nevin played 90 in a 1-0 loss to City, and Claire Wheeler. Nearly forgot the name there, guys. We're all over it. Claire Wheeler also got 90 minutes, guys. She started. Let's go.
Fullback.
As Everton.
I love that from the weekend. You had Courtney Nevin getting 90 minutes in Claire Wheeler's position and Claire Wheeler getting 90 minutes in Courtney Nevin's position. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Switch it up. Everton got absolutely demolished by Man United 5-0. And then Tottenham also beat Villa. In other games around the world, Ellie Carpenter decided to take a quick trip home, so she wasn't in the squad for Lyon's battering. Sarah Hunter on the pitch for Paris FC. We are manifesting things over here, folks. I tell you, everyone's listening to the show and being like, oh, cool, these people. And Claire Hunt, not only in the league, but Champions League. That's a good sign. I love seeing that during the week. Even though it was against Man United and we lost, but that's okay.
Well, to be fair, we said
She is carrying an injury though, Claire Hunt. So I think she might have taken a bit out of her those Man United games. She's apparently pulled up a bit sore. I think she's going to be right for the Tillies games. I haven't heard anything out of Football Australia that says otherwise, but the scuttlebutt in France is that she's carrying a bit of a knock after those games. Might have been when she clashed through the advertising board. I don't know.
No, there's something that we said as well. I wasn't sure how quick they'd be able to assimilate, and that's why I wasn't really fretting about, they're not playing straight away. You know, it's like what you said, Kieran, with Kyra. Obviously, she's still young. She's still got a lot of time ahead of her. I was saying the same thing with Sarah Hunter. So now to see her actually get some minutes and some significant minutes and being part of a squad, it's fantastic. And, you know, she's in one of the top sides in France as well. I said it on one of our first shows. The 3 Aussies we've got in France are at the top 3 clubs. Like, that's an indictment to how good our players are, really.
Well, the thing is with Sarah is that she was also chased. Like, it's not like after the 2019 World Cup, a lot of Matildas went overseas to just find any European club and went looking for clubs. Sarah Hunter was sought out and chased by Paris FC, and their coaches are like a legendary number 6 in French football. So this is a coach who knows what that position takes, and that's the player she wanted. So long term, she's going to be fine there if she sticks it out. They clearly wanted her, and she's been training. She copped a little bit of an injury and missed a couple of squads, but she's been in full training, been in the matchday squads, and got a run.
So it's been fitness. That's why she hasn't really featured so far.
She did all the preseason training, and then she was in the under-23s Australian squad and pulled out of that. So I'm assuming it was an injury thing because she then wasn't in the next two Paris FC.
I thought it was just a language thing or an assimilation thing. She wasn't settled in yet.
No, she was at the Rugby World Cup, I think. She was meant to be playing for the Australian under-23s and pulled out of that and was replaced by... Who was she replaced by? It doesn't matter. She was replaced by someone. Paige Zoyce flew over at the last minute to replace her in the games against Scotland. So something happened where she missed a couple of Paris FC squads and a couple of Matilda squads. So that could only
That's
be injury,
trippy
really.
That someone like Paige Zoyce isn't able to get straight into an Australian under-23 squad as well. Like, that shows how much talent we've got at that level.
Yeah. So she was like at victory training and got the call and was just on the plane that day and flying over to Italy.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Hayley Razzo also gets 69 minutes as Real Madrid lose to Levante. So very interesting over there. I genuinely have not looked what's happened in the Scandinavian leagues this week, guys, so let me catch up on that. BK Harkin got up. Vizio lost.
Yeah, Charlie Grant did a
Rosengard.
professional foul and got a red card as well.
She's taking a leaf out of Gary's book, I think.
Let's go, Charlie.
Nice influence.
And Norgeland beat... I'm not even going to try and pronounce these names, but one of those other names that I can't pronounce, guys.
Believe Matilda McNamara got player of the match in her game for Arhaus as well.
Yeah. She plays every minute of every game.
2-0.
She doesn't miss a second of that.
Yeah, between her and Winnie Higley, we've
there.
got some good players going over there. Good centre backs as well, actually. Future's pride in that position.
Yeah.
Bit of a different look going forward. This week, folks, we're not looking at 14 million different games. Yes, the WSL is playing this weekend. We're going to have our Leicester. No, we won't have Leicester. We'll have maybe one Bristol City person. Bristol. We've got no one that plays for Bristol, Josh. Let's try Brighton. But yeah, everyone's here in Australia, in Perth, as we have Olympic qualifiers ahead, and that's why we brought you in, Kieran, because Cody and I, as much as we are wealths of knowledge in many different aspects, this is your realm, and we're here to kind of delve into your brain. So before we start, I posed a question to these guys last week that the guys on Sky Blue Stories kind of asked us. Let's start with what's your opinion on the squad, how it looks right now, and from your perspective, how are you reacting to that squad now?
So there were two ways they could have gone after the World Cup, really. They could have started the regeneration for the next World Cup now, or they could have given this generation, mostly a lot of them still going to be there in 4 years' time, but like a big chunk of them won't. Give them one more chance to win a medal or win a trophy with this team. Eventually, they do have to start regenerating them and bringing through younger players for the next tournaments. You don't want to leave it too late like the US did, and then you sort of crash out, or Germany to an extent as well. But I think they've done the right thing by sticking with this team and this coach for this tournament. I think they've earned the right to an extent to try and crack on and win a medal. They came close enough last time to have a little bit of luck go their way. They'll get one, and I think they really deserve one for what they've given to the game. They deserve one last crack at it. After this tournament, after the Olympics, Tony's contract is up. If he stays, it'll be interesting to see if he wants to stick with the players that have served him well, or if he wants to restart things. But he's been a big push, a big instigator of having the under-23s for the women's squad, which didn't exist before he came in. So he's all about bringing through the next generation, just not on game day. But he knows that it's important. Like he's played a big part in making sure it happens. So I think the pieces are set for these guys, the last World Cup team, to have one last crack at it, their last dance, so to speak, and then it's time to start moving a few players through from who've been plugging away in the younger age groups.
Yeah. Just before we push on, the question we were asked by Sky Blue Stories was, are we surprised that we didn't see the kind of retirement announcements like the US, Canada,
not yet,
all had?
I think they there was a question of hunger, like after the World Cup, how much is left in the tank for them? Because of so much the last 4 years has been, they've all moved overseas. Tamika Yap didn't see a kid for like a year. Like they've given up so much for the World Cup. So there's a bit of a question of how much is left in the tank after that. But it looks like they're still really burning to win a medal for Australia. If they don't, then they've given everything they can. But I don't think they want to die wondering. So I'm not surprised that we're going with the tried and tested one more time. Go around one more go.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. That's a cool little different perspective that we hadn't really heard, which is cool. Let's dive into the first game versus Iran. Now, I believe that Kieran is aware of a cool story of how Iran got to this place that Cody and I were kind of surprised about. Do you want to fill us in on this Iranian team and what we can kind of look
direct you to an article rather than try and get into it myself. If you just Google Sam Lewis Iran women's football team, it'll come up. I think she wrote for the ABC. Basically, football was illegal for women up until fairly recently. They weren't even allowed in the stadiums until fairly recently. So for them to even exist as a team, I think is pretty awesome. For them to get this far in Olympic qualifying is pretty amazing. I hope we thrash them. We should thrash them. But they've earned their shot, and they've had to do it. I've always said, like, for me, women's football is like punk rock, where it's like, it's not really meant to exist. For a lot of people in the establishment want to sit there with their bow ties and sort of go, this it can't happen. But they've made it happen. Like they've risked their lives to make this happen. This team, you can get imprisoned for playing football if you're a woman in the country when they first started playing. So they've done it the hard way, and it's great to see them have their shot.
100%. Cody, I know you're on team. We should thrash them. Yeah, I don't know what else I can say here, but
as much as I'm saying you're on Team Thrashing, that's coming from the fact that I don't know a lot about this team. For all I know, they could come to Australia, and on paper, in terms of quality, they're probably not going to match us. But you talk about the journey that they've gone through, and that can be really inspiring for a side. Now you're going into what's probably one of the biggest games they've played in their short history. You never know; there could be a level of desire, and then that brings them here and makes them actually be a really difficult game. like, I share the sentiment. I really do hope we thrash them. But you never know. Like, you come from a background like that, suddenly, what's facing the fourth best team in the world when you've risked your life to play the game in general. So, they've clearly they've had bigger challenges than what they're going to face with the Matildas, just in terms of their personal life. So, what's another football match, really?
Yeah, they'll be up for it. They won't be. They won't be afraid. They won't have any trepidation. We'll have to be at our best to thrash them. Anything less than being completely switched on, we'll be asking for trouble. But at our best, it should be a pretty comfortable scoreline. I'll be surprised if we concede, really, if we have a full strength team.
Yeah. Does Tony go all out attack just to kind of get confidence in the girls straight off the bat?
It didn't really work in the Asian Cup, did it? Oh, it's hard to say because it did work in the Asian Cup. We got undone by one moment of genius by G. So I reckon you go all out in the first game, get 3 points, and then start resting players after that. But yeah, I think knowing his track record, he's probably going to go with his best 11 first up and try and get the 3 points in the bag and then move on from there.
I think that's what we need to do, to be fair. You're talking about, at the end of the day, as much as we can talk about all these things in terms of bringing the next generation through or making sure fans are getting a product that they want, this is a competitive match. It's a competitive series.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we get the results that we need to get through. So at least for those first two games, we need to make sure we're on top of our game. Once you get to Taiwan, if we've got first place borderline secured, then maybe you can start looking at rotating. But this game and the Philippines game, I'd be making sure we get the results first and foremost.
Yeah, you want 6 points out of the first two games, and you don't want to disrespect the opponent by playing like a mishmash side that hasn't really played together before. You want as much of the core together as possible. If anyone's injured, don't risk them. It's probably not worth Sam Kerr getting hurt again and sending him back to Chelsea with a stuffed up foot or ankle. But yeah, we should be playing it like as seriously as we approach the opening World Cup game, just to get it done.
Yeah, 100%. Controversial fixture being moved to the larger stadium here. What was your opinion on the shift in venue on this, Kieran?
I was mixed. I think because it's a competitive game, it should be kept at the smaller Cauldron-like venue, just because of what we saw with Amy Park at the World Cup. I went to games at Amy Park, Allianz, and Stadium Australia, and Stadium Australia didn't have the best atmosphere compared to the other two. It's just not like the bigger stadiums just aren't built for football, really. So the noise isn't the same, but it's going to be sold out. It's going to be 50,000 people. So even if half of them are theatre goers, there's still going to be 25,000 people there who are diehard Matildas fans, and it's going to be pretty great to watch. But yeah, I'll go back and forth. I think competitive games should have been kept in a smaller ground, but who are we playing? Playing the Philippines in that one?
Philippines.
Yeah, I mean, like 50,000 fans behind you against one of the harder teams in the groups can't hurt either.
I mean, the hard thing here is that Australia does have a big Filipino community here as well. So like, yeah, there is the risk that the other 25,000 tickets are Filipino fans, and it's a 50-50 split in that stadium. Especially with like some of the results they pulled in that World Cup, like there'd definitely be some Filipinos looking at their national team and going, "Hey, I get a chance to see them in my hometown." Like,
yeah, I'm going. They did finish bottom of their group though, so let's not get too worried about what they can produce. They're just the hardest of this group. Like, I like Philippine football. I follow it. I like all their players, but I think they were a little bit overhyped by some of the Australian media because of their coaching staff in the World Cup. They did well. They weren't going to get out of the group. They weren't going to pull like a Jamaica and bust out and knock off a couple of giants. They weren't going to do that. But I do think that we can't afford to take them lightly. They'll be very good. Well,
one thing you mentioned about Torkasa is coaching them as well now. One thing you mentioned about him before, he knows how to play to his opposition. So how much does that have an effect on this game too?
Yeah, I mean, he'll work to nullify Australia's strengths, and he'll know what they are. So it'll be, like they'll have to work a way around them because he'll set up to stop us, and they'll have to find solutions to problems that he puts up. So it'll be interesting to watch. I think they can score against us, but again, if we have the full strength team and Macca's in the form she's been in, it should be a win.
100%. You just mentioned something there that I kind of want to touch on and grab some opinions on. Jamaica. News during the week. On the bad side of things, I think there was paid. They still haven't been paid from the World Cup. There's ongoing disputes inside the federation and things like that. And the team have decided to essentially boycott the Gold Cup. Not the type of thing we want to be seeing after the run they just had on the world stage.
No, the federation is like being shitty, but this is FIFA's fault, really. I mean, this is FIFA essentially virtue signaling at the start of the tournament, saying we're going to pay the players directly this amount of money, and then the fine print says, well, we're going to give the money to the federation, who will then pay the players. What's so hard just doing a bank transfer to them directly? Just every player gives their money, gives their details to FIFA, FIFA just gives them their $250,000 each. They could have done that. They said they announced they were going to do that, but then didn't. Like, that's essentially what it was. They gave it to the same people who haven't been paying them forever. What did they think was going to happen? If you give it to the same, like Jamaica's federation has not been paying the players or treating them well for the last 8 years, and they all of a sudden FIFA thought they were going to. Like, yeah, I mean, they knew that this was going to happen. FIFA, like, they had to. They could have just done it properly instead of announcing that they were going to and they're not doing it. But yeah, I hope they get justice because they're an awesome team. I love watching Jamaica play.
Yeah, 100%. Cody, anything to add on that?
No, look, situation? I wasn't too across the situation in terms of after the World Cup. I know in the lead up there was some significant issues, but you know, it's only on the federation. You look at what happened at the World Cup, and there's such an opportunity to really build on that and create something good from this team. And you know, there's always a debate between comparing the men and the women, and I'm not usually the biggest fan of that. But when you've got a men's side who doesn't really do much in terms of doing well internationally, I think I was tipping them to be a dark horse to make the World Cup for 2022, and then they almost came at the bottom of their group. They were actually pretty shit. And then you've got this side that actually brought a sense of pride to the country and played fantastically on a show that I was running during the World Cup with Front Page Football. My co-host was gushing over the Swabi sisters, borderline calling them, well, it wasn't borderline calling world class, he was calling them world class. But you've got so many players on this side that actually bring a sense of pride to your country. And for some reason, you still hold back on trying to at least give them a fair go in terms of remuneration. So I hope I said remuneration correctly. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but you know, it's a stupid thing by the federation. They're only doing themselves a disservice because now you've got an opportunity to go to the Gold Cup and be a really competitive team and not a dark horse and not a surprise package, and you're ruining it because you can't treat the players fairly. It's stupid. It's not worth it, really.
Yeah. And it just sucks because it's a continuing conversation across multiple federations. Like we've seen it with US fighting for their stuff, Canada as well. It just keeps going, and not a good look. Let's jump into the last game here against Taipei. What are the chances we get to this game? And actually, Kieran, do you actually know the format here? Can you explain what we need to do to?
Yeah, I think you have to top the group, and then you get through to the next stage.
Okay.
And then after that, it's top two, and then you play, and then you have a playoff against another team.
So it's complicated. I know. So we've got to play a playoff to go to the Olympics. There's no top the group, go straight through.
It'll come down to a one-off. If it's the same as it was last time, it'll come down to a two-legged playoff. Last time we had to do it against Vietnam. It could have been against South Korea very easily if Kaya Simon and Emily Van Egmond didn't score that last-minute goal against China. But, and eventually it'll come down to one game.
I just think if we have to play Japan or something, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, you don't want to finish second in your group. You want to...
And really, we have the quality to do that as well.
Finish top. Yeah, the Olympics is tough. It's a funny tournament, and that's why it's a winnable one, because it's so short, and a lot of good teams don't make it. It's a good tournament to win a medal in, because you just have to get a run of form going and then get a little bit of luck, and all of a sudden you've got a bronze medal or a silver medal guaranteed. You don't have to put 4 years of planning into it like you do a World Cup. You just have to hit form and keep your shit together and stay fit when it matters. And the players always say it's a different sort of tournament. Because so many big teams and so many high-quality teams don't make it, it's a really good opportunity for the Matildas to win something.
Yeah, okay. Nice confusing. I've just looked it up on Wikipedia just to make sure I understood what was going on. So essentially the winners of those two playoff games then qualify. Yeah. So, 1 in 4 chance once you get there. Oh, 2 in 4 chance. 50-50.
Yeah, but a lot don't make it. Like there'll be either China, South Korea, Japan, us won't make it. It'll be tough.
Yeah. It's a weird system.
It's weirder in Europe.
The Olympics. I'm not even going to try. I can't understand ours. I'm not even.
I'll just give you one example. So Europe, you have to finish top 2 in your UEFA Nations League group to qualify for the Olympics or get to the next stage. So in the case of England and Scotland, they play as Team GB, Team Great Britain in the Olympics. They don't play under their individual banners. But Scotland and England are in the same group. If Scotland finishes on top of the group, Team GB doesn't go through. If England finishes on top of the group, Team GB goes through. So the Scottish players are in their best interest to lose their qualifying games to go to the Olympics. It's absolutely bananas.
I did see that.
Yeah.
I did see that.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Football, right? So a lot of cool things to look forward to this week, guys. International football's back on our own doorstep. Hopefully the buzz is still there. 50,000 in Perth is going to be hot, especially because they missed out on like that Aussie fever over that side of the country. Fingers crossed the rest of the crowds kind of turn out and we kind of rectify the atmosphere that went missing towards the end of the World Cup. But yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a huge week, and I am ever so pumped to do this all again and break down international football on this podcast for the first time. Kieran, thank you so much for joining us this week, mate.
No worries.
Your brain to the table. We really appreciate it.
I do have 2 spare tickets to the small, 1 spare ticket to each of the small stadium games, if any one of your listeners is in Perth and can make it, because I can't get there.
Easy.
Yeah.
If
just general admin.
Listen to this.
Give me $20. It's yours.
Easy. Shoot us a message if you listen to this, and we'll put you in touch with Kieran. But yeah, guys, that's another week of the Talking Tillies podcast. Yeah, Kieran, thanks again, mate. We'll probably have you on again, pick your brain a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Cody, as always, it's been a pleasure, my friend. And for everyone listening at home, if you haven't already, make sure you're following us on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, TikTok, YouTube, and wherever else you're listening to our voice. If you're listening to on Spotify, make sure you're giving us a follow, leave us a 5-star review, because that's how we get recommended to everyone else's ears. And we will see you next week for a brand new episode of the Talking Tillies podcast. Bye.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Tony. That was exactly...